Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and today we're going to be looking at the audio system that's comprised within the MG ZS EV Exclusive. Now this all-electric SUV is available in two trims, the Excite and the Exclusive. The Exclusive has a 6-speaker audio system with 3D sound, whilst the Excite has a 4-speaker setup instead. Now if you want to find out more about the ZS EV, do check out our full detailed review both on YouTube and on our website. And before jumping in, if you do have Instagram, we'd very much appreciate a follow. It's at TotallyEVNet. It'll be down in the description below or indeed on your screen. So without further ado, let's get into this review. So first off, let's talk about the user interface, which is in the 8-inch infotainment system. So you can see over here I've got it connected over to my Samsung Galaxy S10 over Bluetooth, so you've got Bluetooth music. But what we're really interested in over here is the audio settings. Now here you've got your general volume settings, for example speed dependent volume and the beeps. Then you've got what's more interesting is the EQ settings. Now I'm going to jump into the frequency bands throughout my review, but I just thought to share them over here visually that I've got +3 at 80 Hz, I've got -1 at 500 Hz, +2 at 5 kHz and -2 at 16 kHz. Of course, if you don't like that type of EQ, you can always go for the predefined EQs or indeed turn it off completely. You will be pleased to know that even if you go to a different EQ and come back to your custom, the custom profile is preserved. Then finally we've got the soundstage menu over here, where you've got different sound stages which will visually represent what it is. So for example over here, if you're the only driver, then you might want the single soundstage mode enabled. Here it enables it for all 4 passengers, and of course there's a 5th in at the back over here, and then you can disable it. What you'll notice is that when you do disable it, it does disable the virtual subwoofer. So if you do want the virtual subwoofer, you will need to opt for the 3D sound. And of course if you do have the 3D sound, you can enable or disable the virtual subwoofer altogether. And finally there is the fader and balance, as you'd know in terms of traditional setups. So if you were to move it over here, it'll say front -5, left -3. So if you want to put it back into the center, you can just lob it there and it'll go to 0, 0. Now to give you a taste as to how the audio system sounds on the ZS EV, what we're going to do is give you an audio sample of the ZS EV in all the various seating positions. In this case we're going to choose 4 seats instead of the 5 and give you a sound profile depending on the 3D audio sound system. So do check out for the little description down below, which will indicate which 3D audio sound is being used. As for the song, it'll be by Priya. The song name is Falling. You can also check that out in the description below. Be sure to give her a like and subscribe.
When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. Sing, you know, I'm crawling, crawling. I am crawling. My way back to falling from so high. Falling from so high. Learn how to fly. It's the only way you know how to play this game to success. I'm not quite sussed yet. When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always sing, and now I'm sing, you know, I'm crawling, crawling. I am crawling, my way back to falling. This game to success, I'm not quite sussed yet. Sing, you know, I'm crawling, crawling. I am crawling so high.
Now with the audio demo out of the way, I'm sure you're wondering, how does the audio system sound? Now of course, listening to it over on YouTube and indeed via microphones might not be the best experience, and of course going and visiting your local MG dealer will probably be your best bet. However, I'm going to give you my subjective opinion as to the audio performance. Now let's start off with the sub bass or the rumble. Here the virtual subwoofer does add some prolonged sub bass tones. However, it is very much indeed, as the name would suggest, virtual. a subwoofer, a physical one, would have been greatly appreciated. Whereas some models have them placed in the boot, the MG ZS EV unfortunately does not have this. As such, the sub bass is impacted, and therefore when you do enable the virtual subwoofer, you will get a degree of virtual extension in the low end, but it's never going to compete with physical hardware that essentially provides you that low end rumble and rattle. As for the mid bass, it's very pronounced. As you saw before in the EQ settings, I dialed it down 1 or 2 notches. Of course, it depends on your preferences as to what you would prefer here, but in my case I found that the mid bass was a little bit overpowering, specifically how it was leaking into the mids. As for the mid range, I found it to be a bit of a double-edged sword. I would have liked a little bit more refinement in the mids and therefore sounding a little bit more forward, specifically when it comes to female vocals, for example in Priya's song. As such, I boosted the 5 kHz region by about 2 notches. Again, it depends in terms of your hearing and what you actually listen to, but in my case and from my test, I found this to be the best settings. Now as for the highs, here I found that the highs do extend really well. I did find myself dialing it down just a little bit because at louder volumes it did get a tad sibilant, and here I preferred to dial it down just 1 or 2 notches. And finally we move on to soundstage. Now here what I really love about the exclusive model, that it integrates this 3D audio sound. I found myself using the 3D audio sound in the most virtual way. In other words, where all 4 passengers were experiencing this 3D audio sound. Without it enabled, the sound felt a little bit closed. It sounded a little bit claustrophobic, and it didn't pronounce as great instrument separation as it did with the 3D sound enabled. Furthermore, the 3D sound does also impact the virtual subwoofer being enabled or disabled. So if you do want the virtual subwoofer, you will need to enable 3D sound. Now aside the virtual subwoofer that it adds, the 3D audio sound really does deliver a good virtual surround sound. In this case, I really enjoyed listening to my music and indeed Priya's song on the virtual surround sound settings. Here, instrument separation is really well done. There's a good width and depth in terms of the overall presentation, and imaging is pretty accurate too. So what is my verdict on the overall sound quality of the MG ZS EV? Well, quite frankly, I was left impressed. Regardless of its price, I think MG have done a good job in terms of tailoring the sound. Yes, it does need a little bit of tinkering here and there, and it would have benefited from having an actual physical subwoofer in the rear boot. However, on the whole, I am pleasantly surprised, and I must say MG have done a great job specifically in delivering a 3D audio package, specifically in the MG ZS EV exclusive. Now, what I would like to know is, what are your thoughts of the MG ZS EV's audio system? Do you own the Excite, or have you heard the exclusive model? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments below. And indeed, if you do like this type of video, make sure you give it a like, subscribe, favorite and share, and all that good stuff. I've been Chris from TotallyEV. Take care and goodbye.